So, Ben, back from your travels finally.
Yes.
Ben's taken a couple of months off the podcast to go swanning off around South Africa and Venice.
Not so much South Africa, more Cape Verde. I'd say it's mid-Africa.
Oh, right. I thought it was right down the bottom. I looked it up.
So it's a group of islands just off Africa, but it's on the same sort of latitude as the Caribbean. So you've got this strange sort of crossover where you feel like you are in Africa culturally, but there's also a very sort of laid-back blue waters, palm trees, real sort of bit of a Caribbean feel to it as well. It's a bit of a unique, beautiful place. But we were in this massive resort, and me and Karen had a wander one of the days, and we wandered into this section that I didn't know existed, but it was this adult only section. Right. So it was people who wanted to holiday there without their children.
Oh, I thought you were going to say without clothes.
No, there's none of that sort of wandered onto a nudist beach style story.
Did anyone get eaten by a lion?
Why? Oh, because we were in Africa. No, we wandered in this area, which is because this resort was so big. It had an adult-only section where it was different coloured wristbands. We managed to sort of sneak past this security man. And then you're into an area where people are holidaying without children.
Yeah.
And the whole vibe, you just completely changed.
Very different.
We walked into a pool area where it was like lounge beds and people drinking Prosecco and everyone very happy and calm. And there was even like a saxophonist. And he may as well have been sort of mid-saxophone. He's saying, "We've got no kids. There's no kids here." Because everyone was just congratulating themselves that they didn't have their children with them or their children had grown up.
I thought you were going to say there was someone doing coke off the back of a leopard or something.
No, it was just this such relaxed vibe. Well, no one was covered in snot and ice cream. That's the difference, But yeah, that was just after Christmas. Long flight, 6 hours, but it was short little transfer when you got there, so that was good. And then,
how long were you there for?
Oh, a week.
Oh, nice.
And then
just what you knew this time of year.
Oh man, yeah. Well, it's just after New Year, so the weather was all shitty, and it's just that. You know what it's like at the minute. It's just. And then last weekend we went to a place Venice for the weekend. That was really nice.
Venice. Magical.
Yeah, it's just like being on a film set. But it gets very foggy and very misty, very cold.
Yeah.
It's sort of 0 degrees, and there's a carnival going on there at the minute. Like you said, everyone wears those masks.
Yeah, carnival masks and Murano glass are the two big things you see in all the shops.
That's it. But there was a carnival on, so lots of people were dressed up. So you went out in the evening and there was sort of this mist everywhere and these people dressed up walking towards you by the side of a gondola in masks. And, it was really sort of atmospheric while we were there. It was great.
Sweet.
But yeah, we just went everywhere by those water buses that you tootle around.
Yeah, they're great, them.
The thing is with a water bus, the little water taxis that go everywhere, you can get on and off. With a gondola, it's the two of you sort of stuck there with obviously a man with a big stick.
Yeah.
And, people you saw people on them and you just thought, they're just thinking, when am I getting off?
It's good time of year to go as well, winter and Christmas, because it can sometimes, especially around the Grand Canal where the fish market is and stuff, it gets a bit smelly in the summer.
Yeah, I've heard. And it's like the tourism just goes through the roof there, doesn't it?
It doesn't take anything away from it. You still have a fucking great time. But it gets a bit tangy here and there.
But, it's short flight from Birmingham. It's only a couple of hours. And like, when we got there, because, you think of Venice and you think, oh, it's going to be really expensive.
Yeah.
But, I went in the supermarket and a bottle of Peroni was €1.40. So I thought, I've cracked it here. This is, forget the culture and everything else. Yeah. The big bottles of Peroni are €1.40. And that's it. That was me made.
Because there's not, there's not really nightlife, is there? There's restaurants and there's some bars, but the bars aren't open super late. I mean, that wouldn't matter to you anyway, because you got Rose with you there, haven't you?
Yeah, you don't see any stag doos wandering around, which is amazing, really, because, Ryanair go there and you'd think that But there's other places to go, isn't there? But
Yeah.
beautiful place. It's got to be sort of visited at least once in your lifetime. I think it's that sort of place.
Was it flood?
There's nowhere else like
Was
it.
it flooding when you were there?
No, it wasn't. I know what you mean.
It's brilliant when it's flooding, because is it Marks Square, the big
St Mark's Square, the massive
with the
square,
tower and everything. Well,
yeah,
that floods, and it's just nice seeing now all the businesses, because they're all round that square and the back streets behind. And when it floods, it gets up to about a foot of water in all the shops. And you notice in none of the shops there's no lino; they're all proper ceramic tiles, because it's all obviously got to be waterproof. And they just, they shut the business and sit there having a coffee for a couple of hours when it floods, and then the water drops down. And they
it's tidal, isn't it?
Yeah, and then they just squeegee it all out and open the door again and get on with the day. It's fucking bad. But when we were there, we were in the hotel room getting ready to leave for the day. And Karen was looking out the window. She might have been having a smoke or something back then. And she said, "There's an old man out here trying to climb into a bin bag."
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, I'm in. So I'll go
What's
over.
in the bin bag? That's the question, isn't it?
Well, look down, and sure enough, this little old man, he's pulled a bin bag out of his rucksack. He's sort of mid-60s, 70 maybe. And, he's speaking Italian. You can't tell what he's saying, but you can tell he's swearing, because he's very angry as he's doing it. And he's stepping into this bin bag. And eventually pulls both sides of the bin bag up to his waist. And it's, it's flooded at the time. We're all right at the hotel, but about 20 feet away, he's going to turn a corner and he's going to hit the flood. So he's going to be ready. And he pulls his bin bag up to his waist and tries to walk off with both feet in one bin bag, which is like
tough gig.
Yeah, it's like kind of like the sack race, but when you try and walk it. And then he gives up, goes absolutely fucking mad with himself, starts swearing again, pulls his rucksack off, fishes around in his rucksack, pulls another bin bag out, steps one leg out of his first bin bag, puts it in a second bin bag, and he's now got one over each leg. This is what he should have done in the first place. Holds each up around his waist and strides off confidently, safe that his legs aren't going to get
like it.
It's one of them places, in every corner you turn, there's just either something weird going on, or something really startlingly beautiful, or something a bit creepy. It's just a real...
Because this carnival was on, there was a lot of street performers, and there was dotted around the city, which we found out before, a lot of free gigs with bands or strange street performers and things like that. So it was really good, really good.
You've not seen Don't Look Now, have you? The film. We talked about it a while ago. This is an old horror film set in Venice with Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie. And it's not dead scary anymore, because it was, I think, about 1973 or something it was made, and it's of that era where it's a bit old to be properly scary now. But when it unfolds at the end and there's the big twist, you think, fucking hell, everyone's been using that in horror films for the last 10 years or the last 15 years. It's like a proper M. Night Shyamalan moment. And it's got there's a love scene in it with him and Julie Christie that goes on for about 14 minutes as well.
Yeah.
It's famous. It's a love scene in a film that you can actually fall asleep during. And that shouldn't really happen, should it?
No, that doesn't really happen anymore, does it? I feel like you shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Like you're watching it from inside a cupboard.
Right, well, new year, and we're going to do a couple of things differently this year, aren't we? We're going to have a go at doing, how long we'll do this for, I don't know, we'll possibly run out of ideas, but we're going to have a go at doing a themed section each month. And to start off with, this month's topic is going to be...
School.
Now, Ben, did you go to school?
Yes, vaguely. I vaguely remember going to school. And
Just a normal school, was it?
Yeah, it was opposite my house. It was built and opened by Maggie Thatcher in 1977, and then it was torn down about 40 years later because it was just not fit for purpose. And buildings, they stand the test of time by the pupils they house, don't they, and how it's looked after. And it was just flattened, and they built a new one which I worked on like 40 years later. So But
circle of life.
yeah, it was a very local school. That's where I met all my mates. Actually, all my mates that I'm still friends with. That's where we all met at school. I'm trying to think.
Was it always in the Midlands, your schooling? Mine were all up in Barrow and on Walney Island.
Yeah, well, it was always not just in the middle. It's not just in the same town. It was in the same district of that town as well.
Yeah.
So like primary school and junior school and high school were all in Amington in Tamworth. So it was very tight knit sort of thing. Yeah, and always, the best memories of the school are the things that you either got in trouble for, or the sort of terrorizing the teachers.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you ever did this, but we knew there was a teacher that used to come in, and we'd plan it, and we'd all sit in our chairs and sway in unison. And then when she'd tell us to stop doing it, we got this lad at the front who was like probably the better behaved lad, and he'd say, "We're not swaying, miss," as we kept doing it, make her try and feel dizzy. And science, our science classes were all quite dangerous places. We had gas taps on the
same here.
So people smoked that, Ben, and they were always turning the gas taps on and lighting them up, and we used to heat spoons up and things on Bunsen burners and then drop them into people's blazer pockets, so they'd be like, "Oh, what's that?" and then put their hand in and scald the end of their fingers.
You've used the word blazer there. I'm starting to think that your childhood might have been very different to mine.
Well, yeah, we were forced to wear blazers, but then looking back, it kept you warm in winter, especially if you didn't have a coat,
How bizarre.
But
what about lessons? What about your performance? Did you think that you were kind of equipped with all the necessary tools to thrive in a modern? Were you considered bright? Did you find everything easy, or?
I was in top sort of classes and so on. But I wasn't really academic. My mum gave me an incentive and she said, if you any GCSE you pass C and above, I'll give you a tenner. So I only took 8 GCSEs, but I got 7 Cs. So I did the bare minimum to get the money.
You see, that's very clever in itself.
But yeah, there was no A's and B's.
It's a very lean way of doing it.
The way I look at my school, it's a thing that when you leave, you miss a lot, don't you?
No. Well, I mean, I got my adult autism diagnosis, didn't I? Which, it doesn't actually mean anything in real terms as an adult, but it explains quite a lot from your childhood, because I was just treated like I was either mental, just fucking crazy, or thick all the way through school.
Well, your teachers would have looked at you and decided that it was a behavioural thing, that you were choosing to behave in that particular way, where a lot of probably your problems that you had at school weren't behavioural, it was because of your diagnosis.
Yeah, and it was just anytime. It's the same as an adult, although it's just manifests as anxiety these days. It was just, as soon as I got into school with all them people, it was just being around a lot of people, just went fucking crazy. So I spent most of school sitting outside the classroom carving or burning my name into an orange plastic chair. and in some lessons, they would just give me pencil and paper and sit me in the corner and let me draw for an hour.
Yeah, it's just there wasn't the awareness, was there? Like, things are in.
Well, that's it. When you were a kid, there was, as far as I knew, there was no autism. There was no one ever that you knew was autistic. There was kids that were well behaved, and there were kids that were, like me, just fucking crazy. And for teachers, I mean, I think that they would take thick and quiet over smart and a bit mental any day of the week.
Yeah, it's that thing on a school report, isn't it? And anytime someone gets a pleasure to teach, that means they sit down and do as they're told. Isn't they? It's as simple as that.
Yeah. They don't sit there biting the edges off squares of raw jelly and flicking them at the ceiling so that they fall off on people's heads and you can't get them out of their hair.
Yeah, flicking ink was a good one against any teacher that wore a white shirt, wasn't it? And, we used to, we had a teacher that used to leave the room sometimes, and two of my mates used to really forcefully force everyone to stand up and cram everyone to one side of the room against the wall, and we'd lock the door. So when the teacher came back and peered through that narrow window, because sewer mates had forced everyone to line up, squeeze up against the wall, she'd think that the classroom was locked and everyone had gone.
Everyone had gone.
I'll tell you about when my dad was at school, and they'd have the school photo taken for the whole year.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so when my dad was obviously at school because he was born in 1939, in the 40s, and he said when the photo was taken, they didn't have the cameras then couldn't capture the whole year,
the full width, so they had to do it in two.
Well, he had to start, yes, sometimes three. So start at one end, take one, and then the middle section, and then the end. But he said a lad at one end, right at the end, once that picture was taken, he'd hop off the bench and run round the back and get in at the other end. So when the photo was developed, like the headmaster would like, Wilkins, because he'd appeared at both ends of the photo. Genius.
Oh, fantastic. What can I yeah, but I mean, we had, I think I told you before, we had one of my teachers, one of my tormentors, turned out to be actually quite a famous murderer eventually. Do you remember?
Did he?
Gordon Park, the Lady in the Lake murderer.
No way.
He did away with his wife in, I think, the late 70s, and disposed of her in Coniston, tied her up with rope and I think it was in a sleeping bag or something, and it took them about 20 years to get him, but they did eventually.
And did he ever show signs of this sort of, homicidal nature at school?
Oh, yeah, he was a right brutal fucker.
I burnt down one of the mobile classrooms at my school. In the third year, like I think year 9 it was, you call it now.
Yeah.
Like a mate of mine turned up at the house and he said, do you want to come over to the school and see what's in that derelict mobile classroom? And I just said, all right, I'll just get my trainers on, like you do. And we broke into it and we set a fire to see what was in there. And it just went up like backdraft. The fire just whipped up the wall of the posters and then sort of came over the top of us. And someone seen us and grassed us up. But I only got suspended. I burnt down a classroom. Just got suspended for 2 days and had to go back in with my dad after the weekend. But
yeah, different times.
I went back in with my dad and they said, yeah, we'll let him back in. It's burnt down a whole building, wooden structure.
I think there's a sense of guilt and kind of an exchange of behaviours, because perhaps they knew that the things that they did to the kids were fairly horrific back then. So they used to say, well, occasionally they're bound to come back at us with something, and it would be unreasonable to expel them completely.
So I've got two older sisters, and one of my older sisters was caned, and then
I was caned a couple of times. Yeah,
first year of high school, and then it was banned while they were actually at school. But they were only sort of 6 and 7 years older than me, So,
but going back to Gordon Park, he was one of 3 famous people from Barrow-in-Furness. There was Gordon Park, the murderer, Emlyn Hughes.
Is he from Barrow?
Yeah, was from Barrow.
Oh, because everyone thought, you just assume he's from Liverpool. Or he was from Liverpool.
But the third one was a guy called Morris Winters, who used to get called Whiplash Winters, who was... He was the PE teacher, and he won the 200 metres gold at the 1978 Commonwealth Games in Canada.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
He pioneered the seated start, the track style. The traditional way
with
of
the crouch down. Yeah, because they stood up before then, didn't they? Yeah.
No. The traditional way is the crouch down, where you're on your fingertips with your knees facing the track. He pioneered the seated start, where you'd be sat on the track, almost like you were sitting on, just sitting on the ground.
Yeah.
And he reckoned that as he got up from that, it would fire him with with such propulsion that it gave him an advantage over the traditional start. Whiplash Winters, he was called. He used to leave skid marks on the track like Back to the Future. And they're the only famous 3 people that ever came from Barrow.
Oh, no one else other than that, apart from the famous bus stop in the Chewits.
The Chewits advert, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
you would think all these years, but how long's X Factor been going? 20, 25 years, and Britain's Got Talent?
there'd be
Fucking
someone.
someone from Barrow would be on playing the fucking spoons or whatever.
Well, there's a man from Tamworth that's in the news at the moment because he's called Spudman, and he's managed to convince the world to come to Tamworth and try one of his potatoes, and it's gone viral. Like, there's been people flying in from Indonesia, and then getting the train down from Bradford to have one of these potatoes.
What are they?
Nothing.
Not,
It's just
not just potatoes. I know what potatoes are. I'm from Barrow, but we have got potatoes.
He's just he just started filming himself, and he just comes across as a good guy, and he's been giving potatoes away, and he's just one of these things that picked up on a TikTok video, and he's had like 6-7 million views, and people are coming and queuing for 2 to 3 hours for a potato off him. It's mad. Spud man.
Yeah, and I bet if he'd have walked into Dragon's Den with that idea, they'd have laughed him out of the place.
I don't know. It's just a freak of marketing, and it's for some. I think it's like any sort of anything PR or any marketing pitch where people smell that it's not genuine, then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because this guy, he's had trouble with his kidneys, and he's just been putting videos up, and he just comes across as a very real person.
Probably all the fucking potatoes he eats.
Yeah. All the start.
Mr. Thomas, you're suffering from potato kidney.
Yeah, you've got potato blight.
Do you remember talking about school, in little school, do you remember trundle wheels?
No.
Trundle wheel was, it was a bit of wood about 2-3 foot long with a wheel on the end and a clicker. And they used to give you them as a kid to go and measure the playground and stuff, and you had to write it down.
Okay.
I think one turn of it was a metre or something.
Oh, you see them on the street measuring out for pipes and stuff, don't you, on the pavement? Yeah.
Although they are probably a slightly more advanced version. There's probably a laser involved.
No, it just looked like a wagon wheel with a big stick to me.
I got given a trundle wheel in, how old would I have been? About 7 or 8 at Vickerstown School. Sent off with this trundle wheel to measure the sports pitch, and disappeared completely and came back about 4 hours later without the trundle wheel. And it was never found. No idea where I was, because I was in my own world back then. I think I remember being in a skip letting off smoke bombs at one point, but just eventually made my way back to school. Where's the trundle wheel? The what? The what wheel?
You went on Tuesday morning, and it's now a week later.
Yeah.
Where have you been?
Came back with a beard. I can't remember if I ever told you this story. That, well, eventually me and my little group of friends, we just more or less stopped going altogether by about 14 or 15. And eventually the most time we ever spent in school was after hours. It started off with us going to the sixth form college in the evenings to watch the girls play netball, as you do as a teenager. And we realised that they didn't shut the rest of the college when they were doing this. So you'd go in, you'd watch the netball, and then you'd go wandering around the college. And then, obviously, as kids do, we eventually started nicking stuff. And when they worked out that stuff was being nicked, they did start locking the rest of the college. So then what we would do was wait until the college was completely shut, and then we started breaking in. And then we started breaking into all the schools in the area as well. I'm actually not in the least, there's some funny stories about, what we did, but I'm not proud of it at all, because at 14, 15-year-old, you don't give a shit about anything. But later on, you understand that schools have never got any money.
Yeah.
Not them kind of schools, not them kind of colleges, and the equipment and stuff that we nicked. It was probably a big deal to someone, and it was just shitty. But
I feel guilty for every window I smashed of my school, because it wasn't really locked up at night, and it's one of those strange situations where you'd say you hated school, but then a lot of people would go back there and hang around there at night, just for something to do. So
yeah,
I remember nicking a box of Kit Kats from the tuck shop and just getting sick of eating Kit Kats. Like I thought it was going to be good, but we divided it in between 4 of the 4 people that were there. But oh yeah, I was so sick of them in the end.
We did that. One of our favourite things regularly was going, targeting places that had tuck shops and just taking everything. So we'd come away with bin bags full of stuff. And, in Goodfellas, there's a scene where, what's the guy called in Goodfellas? He's called Maury or something, the guy with the wig who's a carpet salesman.
Oh, yeah,
who gets into a fight with Robert De Niro because they've done a job together or something, and he's moaning about not getting paid, and eventually De Niro pays him, and he says, "Don't fucking make any major purchases."
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise
He's the one who turns up in a pink Cadillac.
Yeah, you're going to get us all fucking pinched.
And his wife has got like a fur coat on.
A mink coat on, yeah. Well, we nicked all these carrier bags full of stuff, and we'd agreed that eventually we'd try and sell it in the playground or, flog it at school. But we'd sit on it for a few weeks, so that, there was no heat attached to it. Anyway, the next day, one of the lads comes into school with this fucking huge bulging bin bag, drops it in the middle of the playground, starts throwing fucking Milky Bars up in the air, shouting, "The Milky Bars are on me!" Another time we'd got into the French rooms, and do you remember French lessons? They used to play things on tapes.
Yeah, we had like a tape deck in front of us at these desks and headphones on. And there was always people fucking around, like swearing and farting through the headphones and things like that.
Well, they were kind of like a little version of a ghetto blaster, and both the French rooms had one. So straight into one of them, picked it up. It was just out on the teacher's desk, so we had that in a bag. Went into the second French room next door, couldn't find it. But there's, the big floor-to-ceiling old wooden cupboards with shelves at the top and doors at the bottom that you used to get in schools. The doors at the bottom, there was a padlock on it, and we went through the drawers, couldn't find the key. So we pulled the cupboard away from the wall, and we kicked the back of it in. And lo and behold, there was the stereo. So we had the stereo out, and we pushed the cupboard back against the wall and carried on our way. And the next day, we were in French, and we were in the second classroom, and the teacher had his full-on kind of slightly cocky swagger saying, "You might have heard that we had a break-in again last night."
Yeah.
Who got into next doors and they've taken the tape player that they use for lessons. By this point, he's got his big bunch of keys out and he's slowly going through them as he's talking, walking backwards and forwards. Says, "Luckily," holds up a key, "we keep ours securely locked away." Bent down and unlocked this cupboard, opened it to find no stereo and the fucking back kicked in. I can't quite remember what his reaction was, but what else did we do? Oh, we stole a tuba from...
Yeah, I knew that was coming next.
We stole a tuba, and my mate had hid it in his parents' caravan because they only went away a couple of times a year. So we used to occasionally use his parents' caravan to doss in. If they weren't away in it, they weren't looking in it, so it was empty all the time. But anyway, he must have gone in for something and found this fucking tuba and sat down, with his son and got it out of him what had happened. And he was so worried about his kid getting arrested for stealing, there was a lot of other gear in there, but this tuba that he used to work at the steelworks. He took it at the steelworks and melted it down.
Why?
I always wondered how he got it in. Did he just put his coat over it? All right, Keith. All right. What are you off to?
Why wouldn't you just return it to the school?
I think he panicked.
Any man that sat down to give his son a lecture about stealing, it would finish with, "We're going to return this to the school," but not with, "I'm going to take this to work and melt it down." Mate, what? What are you going to make with it?
I don't know. I mean, potentially, there could be a warship up in Barrow that one of the girders is partly made up of this fucking sixth form college tuba.
Oh, it's brass. He might have got a bit of money for it. You never know.
Yeah, could have. Oh, that was the story he told us. He could have flogged it. Were any good at sport at school?
Yeah, I was all right. I played rugby and football and used to do cross-country runs and stuff like that. I don't remember any really enjoying sport at school because you tend to be outside during, the winter months,
Yeah.
having a football that was as hard as a rock kicked at your leg,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just either stopped going to sports or forged notes But my brother, when he was, he was 6 years older, so when he was at that age, at Parkview School, the same school, he was quite a big lad and he liked rugby, liked to play rugby and wanted to play for the school team. But I think this was before my mum remarried, married our stepdad, and just, we were in poverty and couldn't afford the school kit for him to play on the rugby team. And I think the kit at the time, the rugby shirt for Parkview, I think it was like a dark bottle green with a light blue stripe across the front. So our mum in full on, welfare green pepper burger mode, thought, I'll just make you one.
I'll knit you one.
She got a knitted woolly jumper that was blue and stitched a green stripe across the front of it. So not only was it this woolen jumper that as soon as they played rugby in the rain, the sleeves went down to his ankles because it just stretched. But she'd inverted the colours. Bless her.
No one will notice.
Bless her. She didn't worry about the details. Don't matter. Be right. It'll keep you warm. Do you remember Kung Fu, the series with David Carradine? Or was that a bit early for you?
Maybe. I
was mad on that, and I wanted a Kung Fu outfit, the classic white Kung Fu robe with the black belt. And again, our mum said, I'll just make you one. It'll be fine. So I was like, all right, okay. I'll go with this. I'm getting what I want, it doesn't matter where it comes from. So the classic black and white outfit became, she found this sort of gold shiny curtain material up the loft that she'd, obviously curtains from the 60s or 70s that she'd thought, I won't throw them out, that'll come in handy one day.
For a Kung Fu outfit.
So I got this sort of gold sparkly robe with a black belt around it that made me look like the flamboyant homosexual proprietor of an opium den in the Wild West,
That's a specific look, isn't it?
And she'd be like, why don't you go out and show your mates your Kung Fu outfit? I'll go, oh, no, I don't want to ruin it. It's too nice for that.
You'd have to really learn Kung Fu if you went out with it in public.
You're just going to end up in a tree with your pants pulled over your head, aren't you? Going on like that.
You mentioning that forged notes. One of my mates, his first name is Carl. And when we were in the first year at high school, he was just off school for about 6 weeks. And all these rumours went round that he was faking having chicken pox and this sort of stuff. So when he did come back in after 6 weeks being off, our teacher, Miss Rudland, was like, "Where have you been?" And he says, "Oh, I've not been very well." And she says, "Well, your mum needs to write me a note explaining where you've been for the last 6 weeks, And he didn't, and it went on day by day.
Yeah.
Have you got that note, Carl? You got this? And finally, she said, one morning, "Carl, I really need some evidence of, your absence." He said, "Oh, I've got a note." He comes in his back pocket, and he showed it me because I sat next to him before he handed it over to her, and it said, "Dear Mrs. Rudland, Carl was ill. S. Hayes," and that was it. 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Carl was ill. He goes, "There you go."
It's hard to disprove, though, isn't it?
She had to accept it. Never did find out why he was off, but
that's the thing. That's the secret. Go really broad with your diagnosis.
Well, they say, never be too elaborate with your lie. Keep it simple.
Yeah. What about all the trendy gear when we were at school? Did you have all the trendy gear, or were you kind of?
Oh no, it was. I don't know. My year was late 80s, early 90s. So if you wore your shell suit jacket under your blazer, and that was about it, really.
Under your blazer?
Yeah, because you weren't allowed to wear coats I mean, like coats around school. So you had you keep it under your blazer and then do it up when no one saw.
Back to this fucking blazer thing again.
Yeah, but not really. I don't know.
If you didn't wear your blazer properly, you used to get sent to the prefect, and you weren't allowed to play polo.
Yeah, well, I remember if you forgot your blazer, it was the same as PE. You were given one to wear out this bin. And we had a mate called Baz that didn't bring his blazer in. He was given a blue one when everyone else's blazer was black. Ooh. So we took it off him in history when the teacher wasn't there and set fire to it out the window because he was supposed to give it back at the end of the day.
Well, I was just constantly filthy as a kid because I was always off climbing something or breaking, smashing something up, doing something that was going to get me covered in shit or get me clothes torn. So, I didn't have the trendy gear. And one time we got, in the senior school, we got called into the headmistress's office, me and a few of my mates, for a bollocking. I think we'd been taking the piss out of someone and they'd got upset. So we'd been called in on basically a bullying charge. And it's absolutely vital that I say that we were in no way, shape or form bullies.
Yeah.
We were kind of the outsiders, There's every chance that it was actually someone that we quite fancied and we just didn't know how to
express
our complex teenage emotions. Anyway, we got this lecture on bullying, and part of the headmistress's speech was it must be easy for you lot, the cool kids with your fancy gear and expensive trainers. At which point I lifted my leg up and plonked my foot on her desk and just pointed at the cat shit brown high-tech Strada off the market. She had no idea what I meant, but I was just staring at the shoe going, let's fucking say that again. Last day of school. Do you remember it?
Yeah, it was all about ripping your uniform off because our house faced the back gates of the school. So the streets were just covered in torn up uniform, which I never really got because everyone needed it to go back and do your exams. So, like there was shirts and just stuff everywhere. And I think the flour and eggs still went on back then. And everyone just went to the local rec and got shit-faced. That's how I remember.
Well, that's it. I don't think we even went into the school. I think our little group, we went out and we were sat on the playing fields with a few cans, I think. We'd gone because there was a couple of people who we wanted to see, before we potentially parted way forever. But one of our lads, he played a bit of golf and he brought his golf bag with him. And all day he wouldn't tell us why. So got to the end of the school day, and it was a really long, narrow school hours. It was 2 blocks with a connecting corridor, but it was really long and narrow, and it had a narrow car park that ran the whole length of it, and then there was a wall about 2 foot tall that went the whole length that divided the school and the car park from the playing fields. So it got to the end of the day, all the kids came out, we had a natter with the ones we could be arsed with. Then, over the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes, teachers came filing out, and then maybe half an hour later, the cleaners were done. Then they came out, and then it was completely empty. My mate got up, got his golf bag, walked right down to the far end of the school, this little dividing wall. It was about 2 foot high, and went right along the dividing wall, put in a golf ball about every 2 feet. Kept doing it every 2 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet, went right down the other end of the school, about 300-400 yards probably. Then went back to the start and got up onto the wall, got himself a club, fucking 9 or whatever, and proceeded to deftly smash these golf balls through all the school windows one at a time.
Yeah.
He was a fucking deadly shot as well. Any that he missed, he'd produce another one from his pocket and have another go at it, but it never took him more than a couple. He just went right down at the bottom, maybe 200 golf balls all through the different windows of the school. And put his club back in his bag, and off we went.
How to sign off your school day.
Yeah.
When you got through our main entrance, you had to, depends what corridor you was on. We had like A, B and C corridor, A being at the top.
Yeah.
I was up on A corridor for the last couple of years. That's where my form was. But when you got in through the front doors, every so often there's always someone that had managed to tread in a shitload of dog shit on the way to school.
Yeah.
And
it never happens anymore.
It would start off thick on every step at the bottom, and as you get up to a corridor, it diminishes as you got near the top. But the stink, this, and people trying to avoid this sort of freshly sort of disturbed dog shit, and people pick it up now, don't they? But back then it was everywhere, wasn't it?
Even if they don't have dogs.
Yeah.
I very much doubt if we do this every month, get to tie our themed piece in with the film, but we're going to do it this time because the film that we're going to talk about is The Holdovers.
Yes. With, how do you pronounce his second name? Is it Gambatti?
Gambaccini.
What is it? How do you do it?
Giamatti. Paul Giamatti.
That's it, Giamatti.
Yeah, The Holdovers, which came out last year, but considering it's a Christmas film, they didn't manage to get it out in the UK for Christmas. They put it out in January, which was just fucking really weird. And I would suggest to people, anyone that fancies it, I don't think it's out on streaming yet. I think it'll probably come out in the next month or two. But given how little actual Christmas stuff there is on around Christmas, if you fancy it, I would suggest waiting until next Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one you can just sit on, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is Christmas, isn't it? He's Paul, what's his name again?
Giamatti.
Paul Giamatti he's a lecturer, isn't he, at a school, and it's set in about the 70s. It's set in the 70s.
Yeah, set in the late 70s, I think. I think it's all in Massachusetts, I think, New England. And a school called Barton. It's a boarding school, isn't it?
And as the school approaches the Christmas holiday, there's a small selection of kids that can't go home, isn't there, for whatever reason? Yeah. And his character gets given the job of staying at the school, which he doesn't mind too much because he's not. You find out he's not really got much family or anything to talk of anyway.
No,
so
he's not got much of a life, is he?
And so he gets left with 4 or 5 kids, doesn't he? But then after a few days, one of the kids has got a very rich dad that lands with a helicopter in the school grounds, doesn't he?
To take them all skiing.
Yeah. And so the other kids get permission off their parents to go with this lad and his dad, apart from one. So you end up with the lecturer, this one kid that just can't get away. They can't get a hold of his parents.
Yeah.
And
he just so happens to be, he's kind of the professor's main sort of antagonist as well, isn't he, in the classroom?
Yeah. Because
he's, he knows he's smart, but he's just trouble.
And they get left with just a sort of skeleton crew from the school, isn't there? There's a lady there that cooks the food, and
the cook's fantastic.
And
yeah.
she's a really good character, and I suppose it was advertised as sort of the Holdovers, and you did sort of think that I get the premise, they're stuck there. And you thought that was going to be the film, but then it develops. The boy sort of convinces him that let's go into town and let's go into. I think they go over to Boston, and it sort of develops into more of a not a road trip film, but you get they get more scope for things happening as they sort of leave the place, don't they, and have a venture out.
When you first introduced to the professor, he's quite loathsome, isn't he? He's sort of almost given up on any sort of meaningful interactions with people, and he's just got this sneering attitude to life and the kids, and he kind of looks down on everybody, doesn't he? Apart from, weirdly enough, the cook, does she live in the basement, or is it just like a rec room down there?
It's like a rec room, isn't it? But he's definitely got like a relationship with her in the way that...
he goes down and he sits, because she's got a bottle of whiskey and he drinks quite a lot, doesn't he? So he'll go down and he'll sit with her, and they don't say a lot, but there's a kind of acceptance between them, isn't there?
Yeah, she's not had a good time in life. She's suffering with a few things, and there's one bit where they go to a party and she gets drunk in that person's kitchen.
Yeah, she has a bit of
and she has a moment that's really sort of. It's like you're a camera at someone's party, sort of viewing something you shouldn't. They're acting in that scene was so realistic, and I think that's what makes this film different to other films. There's real, it's an American film, And in other American films, there'd be a lot of cliches and a lot of sort of forced emotion, whereas some of the scenes in this are really real, aren't they?
Yeah, well, it's done by Alexander Payne, who did Sideways, and there's a similarity in the approach with, especially the professor's character. Because in Sideways, if you think you're first introduced to him, and he's like this guy is with academia, he is with wine, and
yeah.
he's a bit of a wanker, and then he's stealing money. He goes to see his mum, doesn't he? And he's stealing money out of her drawer, and you think, oh, he's pretty loathsome. But then in the Holdovers, you then, as you find out more, you then start to pity him, and then later on you actually get a bit of sympathy, and then by the end you're almost kind of rooting for him.
Yeah. Yeah, if you've seen the film Sideways and you like that film, you're gonna like this film. This film's not going to be for everyone. I read a review that said, they don't make films like this anymore. It's not like one that you're going to see regularly, is it? But if you like Sideways, there's that bit where he gets the news that his wife's divorcing him while he's at a wine tasting thing, and he just picks up the spit bucket and just tips it in, doesn't he? And that scene where his mate's trying to drag him into that restaurant, trying to get him into the restaurant to meet those women, and he says he finally agrees, but he says, I'll come in, but I'm not drinking fucking Merlot. I heard him in an interview. Do you know, because of that, what he said, which was a joke, wasn't it? Because Merlot's seen as a mixture of different varieties of wine, not one variety.
Not quite as trendy.
So it's looked down upon in wankers circles, sort of thing. Sales of Merlot in California dipped for years because of that, and he said he felt really guilty.
They went up.
No, it dipped because he said, "I'm not drinking fucking Merlot," because people saw the film and saw that he was a wine critic and a wine specialist. Yeah, I'll tell you another great thing about the film is the soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
Great, if you watch a film these days, everyone seems obsessed, about whether the film's got a Hans Zimmer score. Yeah, and it usually means that some Christopher Nolan film's got a load of screechy fucking music attached to it that does your head in for 3 hours, but it's supposed to be genius score. Whereas the soundtrack to this, it sounded like sort of Donovan or Kirk Stevens or someone like, not Kirk Stevens, he's a snooker player. Not Kirk Stevens, it's the other one.
Bill Werbeck.
Who did Hallelujah?
Oh, Terry Griffiths.
That was it, Cliff Thorburn. It's got a real gentle sound. It's got a nice sort of singer-songwriter soundtrack, isn't it? Just acoustic guitars and, and it's very rare that I watch a film that I notice the soundtrack, as well as that. It's not overused and just came in at the right time.
It's just nice, isn't it? And it ends with it ends more positively than Sideways, doesn't it? I mean, Sideways leaves you with a bit of hope that things are going to be better because you sense that he's turning his life around a bit, whereas in this, it's kind of, you see better things for him, don't you? And you see good things for the kid as well, because the kid seems to have bettered himself through the experience.
That's it. They both have, haven't they?
I'll tell people what happened first before we do the quiz. Whilst Ben's been away, I did an episode of Reclining Pair with my mate Rob, who did our theme tune. It was fantastic, and we got to the end, and I hadn't fucking pressed record.
Have you pressed record on this one?
Yes. God, don't do that to me, fucking hell. And the premise of the quiz was, my mate, the musician, is called Robert John. He's one of these, one of life's golden people that get to have two first names, like George Michael, Michael Douglas, Kirk Stevens,
Stevie Wonder,
Halle Berry, loads of them. So you've got a 50-50 chance of getting either of these right. We've got 10 exceptional people, and all you've got to do is tell me if you think they were called Robert or John. I'll give you the surname and I'll give you a bit of the biography.
Okay. Robert or
John. So, straight in number one, surname Stonehouse. He was MP for Walsall North. Stonehouse was remembered for his unsuccessful attempt at faking his own death in 1974. And he also was a spy for the Czech Socialist Republic military intelligence. But was he called Robert Stonehouse or John Stonehouse?
Bobby Stonehouse. Sounds like a musician.
Someone with a Vegas residency.
Or a pizza maker. I think it's John.
You're right, it is John.
He sounds like a serious chap if he was involved in spying.
Right, number 2, surname Leonard Orr. He was California's most notorious arsonist. Started more than 2,000 fires. Worked at Glendale Fire Department as an arson investigator. His co-workers thought Orr was strange. He chased down shoplifters and burglars in his fire truck. But they admired his dedication and his uncanny ability to be the first firefighter on the scene.
But he was an arsonist.
That's why he was first on the scene. He was starting the fucking. It took him 2,000 fires to work out.
It's uncanny, isn't it? How he's always there.
But
stinking of
petrol.
But
was he called Robert Leonard Orr or John Leonard Orr?
I think he's a Bobby. I do. I think he's Robert.
Oh, I've got you there with the double starter again. It was John.
Oh.
Number 4, surname Walker. He was an English inventor who invented the friction match. He was born in Stockton-on-Tees, County Durham in 1871. But is it Robert Walker or is it John Walker?
I think it's John.
Let's have a look. I've got to say it's a very small piece of paper I've stuck over it, so you could be right. It is. John Walker. Right, bit of a long one this. Number 5, surname Toye. T-O-Y-E. He was originally put in prison for mail fraud. Whilst he was in prison, I should tell you he was blind. Blind fella. In prison, he heard that bank tellers in federal insured banks were instructed just to hand over the money without incident. So when Mr. Toye was released in 1974, he proceeded to make his first bank robbery shortly after, armed only with his white cane and a note that claimed he had a gun. His note used to say, be quick, be quiet, or you're dead. Put all the cash in a bag, I have a gun. When he'd received the money, he retreated slowly back towards the door with his white with his white cane, and he did the same. He went on a spree doing this.
Yeah,
and they somehow didn't catch him for a while. He was released in 1974. He was captured in 1977, so he had a good 3 years. 3 years doing this. And he was only captured in New York when he collided with an armed guard that was delivering the money to the bank at the time. He just backed into him. So he spent the next 6 years at the Metropolitan Correctional Centre in New York. When he got out in February 1983, he went to a Citibank and stole $18,000.
So prison hadn't reformed him then. He probably didn't think he was in prison.
He was eventually sentenced to 17 years and he tried to escape 11 times. So that, if you work it out, that's once every 18 months he tried to escape. And if you think about the Shawshank Redemption, Andy Dufresne only managed one escape attempt in 17 years and he could see. So what I want to know is, where's this guy's film? But was he called Robert Toye or was he called John Toye?
Oh,
you'd forgot what we were doing then, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm going to go for Robert because he sounds a bit of a character.
You'd be right. And they called him Blind Bobby.
Blind Bobby.
Number 6, Mr. Bunsen of the famous burner.
Of the burner.
Of the burner.
Oh, we were talking about them earlier, yeah.
He's generally credited with the invention of the Bunsen burner. He only seems to have contributed to its development in a minor way. You know, it's just about who signed the form on the day, I guess. He also invented the filter pump, the ice calorimeter, and the vapour calorimeter. I don't know what a calorimeter is.
Busy guy.
Yeah, he found an antidote to arsenic poisoning. During 6 years of work with it, he lost the sight in one eye from an explosion and nearly killed himself from arsenic poisoning. So that's Mr. Bunsen, but was it Robert or was it John Bunsen?
I think that sounds like a John.
Robert.
Oh, you can't beat these scientists that experiment on themselves, can you? With, I'll come up with something that will stop arsenic poisoning people. So I'll just test it out on myself.
Yeah. Now there's quite a lot to unpack with this next one. This was Mr. Cummings. He died in 1809 and he was a knife swallower extraordinaire. After seeing a knife swallower at the circus, seaman Mr. Cummings began actually swallowing knives. On one occasion, he swallowed 4 knives and quickly passed 3 with no ill health.
How big were they?
It didn't say, but it then just moved on to the next paragraph, and there was no mention of this. It says later he swallowed 14 knives, and after some days with abdominal pain, he passed all 14. It doesn't say he later passed 15, because there was still one in him from the first time. There's never any explanation about where that fucking knife went. If you're a car dealer and you ordered 4 cars and they brought you 3, and you said, "Where's the other car?" And you said, "Oh, I don't know." You went, "Oh, well, never mind. It'll turn up." And the next week you ordered 14 cars and they bring you 14. You say, "No sign of that car from last time." No. You never find out where that other knife went. He finally swallowed 20 knives and a knife case.
Yeah, why not?
But after a few days, he'd only passed the case.
That's slightly worrying, isn't it?
What would have been better is if he'd have passed the 20 knives in the case.
Yeah.
Beat that. Yeah, they never came out. He died after 4 years in pain. On autopsy, a knife blade and spring were found in his intestines and between 30 and 40 fragments of metal, wood and horn in his stomach. What a guy. But was Mr. Cummings, was he a John or was he a Robert?
I'm going to go for John with him.
John it is.
Yeah. Quickly
on to the next one. Number 8, Mr. Paulison. Florida, death by snake. Ooh. Mr. Paulison's the reason why most people don't own an 11-foot python. In 1999, Robert had to remove his pet snake from its cage to feed him when the hungry snake bit him on the forehead. He was found dead in his apartment with his pet snake entwined around his suffocated body. And God, I'm hoping that the teeth were still stuck in his forehead.
There's a lesson for you. Feed your snake.
Feed your snake. Feed your snake while it's in the cage.
Yeah. Don't not feed it and then get it out.
Yeah. Robert or John?
Robert. That's a Bobby.
Robert it is.
Bobby with a snake.
Right, we're down to the last 2. Right, number 9, Mr. Leach. He was a performer with Barnum Circus. He was the second person to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel in 1911. He spent 6 months in hospital recovering from injuries he sustained during the fall, which included 2 broken kneecaps, fractured jaw. After watching a stuntman die attempting to dive from a platform 150 feet up into a pool 5 feet deep, he made the dive successfully.
Fucking hell.
That's some fucking big balls, that, isn't it?
That's insanity, isn't it? That?
Yeah, you'd like to think, you think of the glorious death that that brave man deserved. Anyway, in 1926, whilst on a publicity tour in New Zealand, Leach injured his egg when he slipped on an orange peel. The leg became infected, eventually gangrenous, necessitated the amputation of the leg, and he died of complications 2 months later.
Oh, what a shame, slipping on an orange peel after he jumped into that bucket from 150 feet. That's...
It's not the fall that kills you, it's the oranges.
That's a real shame, that is.
It is, isn't it? I feel like he deserves better. But was he a Robert or was he a John Leach?
Oh, I think I'll go for Robert again.
You'd be right to. Robert Leach. Right, last one. Mr. Cocking, spelled exactly as you would imagine. Died 1837, age 61. I've put in brackets, it's quite important, no scientific training. He was a British watercolour artist who died in the first parachute accident. He'd seen a chap called André Jacques Gagarin, it looks like, make the first parachute jump in England in 1802, and been inspired to develop an improved design. Again, going back to my bracketed piece at the top, no scientific training. A large crowd had gathered to witness the event, but it was immediately obvious that Cocking was in trouble. He had neglected to include the weight of the parachute itself in his calculations, and as a result, the descent was far too quick. I've also put in brackets, his parachute weighed 113 kilos.
You know, that'd be heavier than him.
It goes on to say, though rapid, the descent continued evenly for a few seconds, but when the entire apparatus turned inside out and plunged downwards with increasing speed, that was the end of him, basically. By the end, the actual basket had detached from the parachute, so he spent sort of 1,000 feet hurtling towards the earth in a basket. Yeah. It goes on to say, following Cocking's death, parachuting became unpopular. The weird thing is in the notes, right, it says he was lifted up into the atmosphere in a hot air balloon, and he detached from the balloon at 5,000 feet. Now, it was supposed to be 8,000 feet, but the extra weight of the parachute that he hadn't added into his calculation slowed the rise of the balloon that took him up there. So if he'd have had any sense, he would have thought, why is it 2 hours later and I'm only half as high as I should be? So he could have just fucking avoided the whole thing if he'd have had even the most basic elements of common sense at work. But
brave man.
That, yeah. But was he brave John Cocking or brave Robert Cocking?
I'm going to go for John on that one.
Robert.
Oh.
Yeah. So, we'll give you out of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7.
Oh, that'll do.
It's not bad. It's where you like to be, in it, over halfway.
Anything over halfway is a victory.
Right, on to the drinks section. I think we can all agree that we've had a bit of fun with our drinks section over the last few episodes with Buckfast and Cherry Bee and things like that.
Yeah, and
we probably agree that it's gone about as far as it can as well, doing things like that. We've had just about every silly drink you can buy, haven't we?
As far as sort of retro 80s drinks go, on that special shelf in the supermarket, yeah.
So this year, we're going to start featuring every episode a different independent or craft brewer of either beer or cider. You'd have to be blind to have not seen how much craft beer is around at the minute. It's everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it's really taken off, hasn't it?
You might not know much about it, though. I don't know anything about craft beer. You brew a little bit, don't you? I don't know. You might know a little bit more than me, but
I only sort of know the very basics. Is
Yeah. Well, the guy at the first brewery that we're going to talk about, he's been dead helpful. He's told us about the processes and stuff, and I know absolutely nothing about beer making. I feel like I'm the guy that's been pushing a broom around the Louvre for 40 years, and every day, all day, enjoying the artworks, on a very kind of basic level, but I've never bothered to find out the meaning or history behind any of them, and I'm thinking, now it's time.
Yeah.
I mean, I should say as well that I don't enjoy the artworks all day, every day. Please enjoy the artworks responsibly. So yeah, every month we're just going to get a few beers to try, and the same with ciders, and we'll tell you a little bit about the place. We'll tell you where you can get it, and right off the bat, it's dearer, isn't it? Craft beer and independent beer. It's not your big box stuff from up the Asda. But I mean, if craft beer or cider is something you're interested in, you can even set up a little club with your mates where, let's say, you have 6 pals. If you meet up once a month, you all stick 20 quid in the pot. One of you picks a brewer, orders the drinks, and hosts it.
Like it.
And you all take turns from month to month. 6 times 20, that's 120 quid, which seems like a lot, but
£20 each is only 4 pints down the pub, and instead you might get 8 to 10 beers each that you can drink one round at a time, and have a good laugh talking about. Especially if you're looking for an excuse to reconnect with your mates after the last few years.
Yeah, and
there's your perfect opportunity.
And it's amazing once you start doing research how many of these breweries are local to you, isn't there? You found one that was just around the corner from me.
Oh yeah.
And as soon as you start looking at where they are, and there's a lot of them now, isn't there?
Yeah, and I mean, if you do start doing something like chipping in with your mates, and there's nowhere right on your doorstep that you like the look of, places that deliver, most of these places do deliver that do bottles and cans. They charge the same amount whether it's 20 miles away or 500 miles away. So, it's nice to support local, but if everyone's doing the same thing all over the place and just picking places at random, eventually, everyone's going to do well out of it.
Yeah.
Another thing that I like is usually at this time of year, you were saying earlier on, when the weather's really shit, I'm usually getting the gardening books out, waiting for seed catalogues to drop through the door, thinking about when things are going to be a bit brighter and a bit better. And my new favourite hobby is beer browsing. I can just spend a couple of hours on Google just looking at breweries and what they do and thinking about the summer and starting to see past January, February, getting into spring. It's fantastic. A lot of them have got brilliant websites, and you can imagine, when the sun's out, you're going to get your mates around and, it's going to be better. You're going to forget how shit it is at the minute.
Oh, yeah. As soon as you start seeing the first daffodil as well. But some of these beers the ones that we tried here, one of them's called a winter stout, isn't it? Some of them are made, some of them feel like there should be sort of drank indoors, or in a pub with a big fire on and things like that.
Yeah. Well, the first place that we're going to talk about is the Chiltern Brewery, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is in the Chiltern Hills, which I didn't know a lot about the Chiltern Hills. It's sort of between Oxford and Luton, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Chiltern Railway and stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, considered an area of outstanding natural beauty. It was once known as the larder of London because there's so much produce. It still is, but I would imagine it used to be a lot more. Farmers, orchards, craftspeople, cheese, meat, wine, beer, artisan stuff,
Oh, it sounds like a great place, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and our contact at Chiltern is a chap called Craig Loader, and like I said earlier, he's been dead helpful. He's been answering questions and stuff. And we're going to cover 4, aren't we? He actually sent a couple of bonus ones, didn't he? He sent an alcohol-free one that I'm saving that to give to my stepdad because he doesn't drink. And he sent an IPA, but I don't know if you've tried the IPA yet.
Oh yeah, well I'm not a big fan of IPA.
You're not as keen on IPA, yeah. Yeah, the first one that you mentioned then, Glad Tidings Stout. It's a point or two stronger probably than Guinness or Murphy's, I was going to say. I think it's a little bit strong. It's about 5%, I think.
Oh, is this the winter stout that I've written down then? Is it the same one?
Yeah, Glad Tidings Winter Stout.
Now, I've got a thing about stout because we've talked about this before because I really like Guinness and Murphy's and things like that. And I've tried a lot of sort of stouts or porters.
Yeah. And
they just come across as like sort of inky, oily, tarry liquid.
Yeah.
Whereas genuinely, this stout, you read the blurb on the bottle or on a pump and it tells you this and that. But it did what it said on the bottle. It said it's sort of got this sort of chocolatey orange sort of almost sort of.
I think it's supposed to be sort of seasonal, is it? So I think it's got a bit of spice in it as well.
Yeah.
It's a bit sort of Christmas puddingy.
But when you tasted it, it tasted like the label had told you it was going to taste.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. It was like, I think I wrote down, it was like if Guinness had an affair with a chocolate orange. It was just perfect. And there was none of this sort of inky bitterness that you can get
I remember
with
as soon as we'd talked about when we were drinking them, because obviously we're not drinking these things together because we live a couple of 100 miles apart, but the first message from you was none of that inky bitterness. I thought, we're on to a winner.
Really nice. Really nice. I was really impressed with that one. It was a really nice drink.
Well, I thought, considering that it is a point or two stronger than Guinness or Murphy's, because it was it had a little bit of fizz to it, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that actually made it taste lighter than a normal stout.
Yeah, it didn't feel too heavy either, did it?
No,
Like,
I mean, it's not got that thick, creamy head, but when you get that out of a can with Guinness, there's a widget in there that's doing a lot of the work, isn't there?
Yeah.
And this was in a bottle, so you're not going to get that same kind of accentuated, thick white head.
It didn't feel heavy. Like, there's some stouts you can drink, or if you drink enough of them, it feels like you've been hollowed out and filled with rubble. Like, when I finished this one, I didn't feel like slow and sluggish and heavy. I felt like could have just carried on drinking it all night. It was a shame when there was only one bottle. I kept going.
I know, but I think when we've got a few to try, it's sometimes good that there is only one each. Otherwise,
Well, otherwise you'd be sort of enjoying artwork first thing in the morning. You could just keep going with it, couldn't you?
Yeah. Another thing with that little bit of fizz, I thought it'd also make it a decent summery one as well.
Yeah,
because it tasted a bit more kind of fizzy and refreshing than a normal stout.
That's the thing with stout, isn't it? Like, I associate it with like being a winter drink, but I had that one quite cold as well out of the fridge.
Yeah.
But you feel like you want to drink it rather than no one wants to go into the pub in winter and ask for a pint of cold Carling. Carling. It just
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, God, I've looked forward to after that first one. I thought, I can't see any of these being bad, and every one I thought was. And I did 2 the first week and 2 the second week on a Friday night. I thought they were all great. Which one do you want to?
Well, I've actually lost the name of the next one. It was called. There was 2. There was one that was called, I think it was Battle of Britain, and it was a dark ale.
Oh yeah, the Battle of Britain Old Ale.
Yeah.
Now, what did you say it made you want to do?
Go out into the garden and shoot planes down.
I thought this was great as well. I'm starting to find that the preconceptions that I've got about certain beers, like this, like some that you would call Battle of Britain Old Ale, in my head, I thought it was going to be almost like an old man's drink, like a bitter or something. And I don't know where I've got these ideas from, because they're all, unless I've just matured in my tastes as the years have gone on, but I've avoided these kind of drinks all my life, thinking they were one thing, when in fact they're not. They're absolutely brilliant beers.
Yeah, I do. I really like sort of dark ales or ruby ales.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is being quite basic, but the dark ones tend to be a little bit more on the malty side, and any pale ales tend to be more sort of hoppy.
Yep.
Hoppy infused, don't they? And I think it's all just a matter of taste. But there's some pale ales that are so sort of so hoppy, they almost taste citrusy, like almost lime.
Yeah,
like there was
like lime peel.
Yeah, yeah. Which if that's your taste, that's fine. But I do.
I was thinking about this. I was thinking like in anything else that you eat or drink, it's all about the balance. I think that things are in balance with each other. If you watch any cookery programs, they're always saying, oh, the balance is out with this, it's not harmonious or whatever. And, a lot of beers, traditional beers, are probably, the focus is on a good balance of flavours. And I thought, I bet a lot of, traditional ale drinkers really hate IPAs because they're pushed so far towards the hops that they're almost deliberately out of balance, aren't they?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
One thing is standing out almost perhaps more than any one thing should stand out on a beer. But I really like that. But it turns out that I'm also liking a lot of other things.
Yeah,
but this was great. It's got that really deep sort of russet red colour, hasn't it? This Battle of Britain.
The Battle of Britain one, and there was the other one that I had. It was quite. I wish I remember the name of it. Is it?
Oh, right. There was a 300's Dark Old Ale.
That could have been it. Yeah. Looking back, I did really like the Battle of Britain, and then I really liked that one as well. I wouldn't say they were completely similar, but being dark ales, it was the sort of same sort of look, same sort of texture, and I was already sold into it after my winter stout, my Battle of Britain.
Well, I thought the 300's Dark Old one, I thought that was. I went back afterwards and I read Craig's notes again, and I think I'm right. Anyway, I thought it was even more malty than the Battle of Britain.
Yeah.
There was something in that the 300's Dark Old Ale that tasted sort of something like something sort of bready or cereally, and I think it was if you have a slice of granary bread, some of the grains in it, when you bite down on them, are really kind of bitter, and I'm wondering if that's malt, and that's what that flavour is.
Yeah.
It could be. Anyway. But it was not quite as red as the Battle of Britain, the dark old ale, was it? But it was still fantastic.
Yeah, it's still really nice.
Like a sort of a fireside beer, wasn't it?
Yeah, I do like, any sort of ruby ales like that. They're really nice.
The Battle of Britain was like that beeriness of the first beer that you ever had, and you think, oh, I don't even know if I like this. It's bitter, but it's kind of moreish at the same time.
Yeah.
When you first taste beer and it sort of unlocks your secret door. What did you think of the Monument Gold Pale Ale?
Just again, that's not my cup of tea, because it was quite hoppy and.
Yeah, I thought that. I again thought that pale ale was like an old man's drink, but to drink it and discover that it's actually kind of like the gentler, hippier sort of cousin of the IPAs that I like. Apparently the IPAs that I like are the American style ones, because their hops are particularly citrusy.
Oh, okay.
So that's when you get these American IPAs. They've got that real kind of lime appeal, sort of bitterness to them. It gets the tongue at either side at the back of your mouth, doesn't it? I like that. I'm starting to salivate talking about these beers. But yeah, to find out that traditional sort of IPA isn't in fact an old man's drink, but not only is it a nice, slightly gentler version of the IPAs that I do like, but it's also only 3.8 or something, so it'd be an absolutely fantastic sort of daytime session beer as well. I was dead impressed.
Well, there's a bit of history there, isn't there? I should have researched this, but IPA is Indian Pale Ale, isn't it? And it's something to do with when we colonised India, and we decided we were going to make a beer that suited the weather out there, and I think that's where it comes from. I might be talking shit, but I think so. I think that's where it comes from.
We'll have Craig emailing us saying,
what the fuck are you going on about?
No.
It's Ipswich Pale Ale, not Indian.
But if, for example, you only drink pale ales and you like the American ones and the IPAs that sometimes, they can get quite strong as well, you could introduce this Monument Gold one, which is just a normal pale ale, into it to kind of mean that you're not drinking really strong beers all day. And you won't feel like you were mixing your drinks.
Oh, they're called session drinks, aren't they? When they dip below 4%, it's because, like when people used to drink bitter and mild in pubs for like all day, then, they it couldn't be too strong, because everyone be wankered but after 3 or 4 pints.
So, mixing in, like I say, you could mix these slightly weaker 3.8 golden pale ales in with your IPAs, and you'd feel like you were drinking the same drink, but just a kind of gentler version, so you wouldn't end up
not as strong.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. So that was Chiltern
Breweries, and thanks for sending us the samples.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Genuinely really enjoyed really enjoyed the stout, but the Battle of Britain one is a real beauty as well.
You said it was the best box you've ever opened, didn't you?
Yeah, because I came home from work after a shitty day out in the rain, and Karen says, there's a package there for you, and I thought you'd sent me something mad, so I opened it up thinking, what the fuck's this?
A load of jars of chutney.
And there it was,
Chiltern Brewery, you can find at shop.chilternbrewery.co.uk. Sign up for the newsletter, because they'll tell you when they've got sales on and stuff like that. If you want 10% off, you can use the code reclining10 and it'll give you 10% off your order. Thanks for Chiltern, and next month we're going to do some cider.
Oh, is it cider next month?
Cider next month. I'm going to try and alternate it. That's the intention at the start, but given I'm not the most organised person in the world, we could be drinking anything by month 3, but we'll see how we get on.
Meths. We're the first craft ale podcast to review meths.
How to get drunk in B&Q. Right. I think.
Oh yeah, I look forward to that. I don't drink as much of it anymore, but when I was younger, I used to drink. Well, we used to drink a lot of cider at college, didn't we? And
there won't be same as with the beers. There'll never be a load. There'll only be a few for us to try. So we'll look forward to that. But, we're back now, and we're going to get back to one a month, and, thanks for your continued support. Right, well, I'll let you get back to your warm house.
Sound. Thanks, Mike. See you later.
All right, mate.
Ta-da.
See you later. Bye. Hello, me again. Just to remind you, if you want to order some brilliant beers from Chiltern, the code reclining10 will get you 10% off. And if you do, or even if you start a beer club with your mates, come and find us on Twitter and tell us all about it. Use hashtag #BoatDrinks and let's see how many people we can get involved. Cheers.